Hi, welcome back to Two Sisters, One TV, the classic TV podcast where we celebrate and remember all things and everything classic TV. Today, I'm going to take a quick look at the life and the career of Bob Crane. Bob Crane, of course, as we all know, best known for his portrayal of Colonel Robert Hogan over on Hogan's Heroes, which ran on CBS from 1965 to 1971. Now, that was the TV show and the role that made him a star, made him a household name. However, his career actually began in radio in the 50s. He was from Connecticut. That's where he was born and raised, was in Connecticut. However, in the early 50s, he ended up having a career in radio, and he wound up moving with his family out to L.A., where he got a job on KNX, a CBS affiliated radio station, where he became king of the airwaves. Now, the radio show that Bob had became very successful. By 1960, it was probably the most popular radio show in LA, particularly during the morning hours. The show ran from 6 a.m. until 10 a.m., Monday through Friday. And Bob became very, very successful, very popular, very well liked on his radio show. Now, he was able to acquire some of the biggest stars of the day to appear on his show. Marilyn Monroe, Bob Hope, Frank Sinatra, Marvin Gaye. And of course, so many others as well. And there are actually excerpts from his radio shows available online. If you just do a quick Google search, you'll run across clips from his radio show. You can also, of course, go to YouTube and take a search over there. But his popularity on that radio show is what caught the attention of TV execs. Now, Bob, despite the fact that he had a very successful career in radio, he always wanted to be an actor. That was his ultimate goal. That was his dream. He began to appear in episodic television episodes of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. He was also in the film Return to Peyton Place. He guest starred in The Dick Van Dyke Show. And so he just continued to gradually build a nice resume within episodic television and within films, along with his radio career. Now, in 1963, he ended up being cast in the Donna Reed Show as the next-door neighbor, Dave Kelsey. Dave Kelsey was a wisecracking, funny guy. He was kind of like Gig Young. Gig Young in all of the movies in the 50s and 60s, he was always the really affable sidekick. And that's basically what Bob Crane's character was on the Donna Reed Show. He became kind of bored with the character. He wanted the character to be expanded on a little bit more, wanted him to be a little not quite so corny, maybe a little bit more just kind of basically not so one-dimensional. He kind of wanted to flesh the character out more, but that didn't go over very well with Tony Owen, who was Donna Reed's husband at the time and the producer of the show. So Bob got tired of the role, got bored with it, and he left the show in 1965. It was in 1965 where he ended up trying out for the part of Colonel Hogan for a brand new TV show on CBS titled Hogan's Heroes. It's about a bunch of POW prisoners, in a POW camp when in World War II. Now, honestly, considering the nature of the show, I'm pretty surprised that CBS gave it the green light. Because remember, World War II had ended just 20 years before. And so everything that went on with World War II and the concentration camps, the prisoner of war camps, all of that was still very fresh in the minds of so many people. But CBS decided to go ahead and, give the show, they greenlit it, and it made its debut in the fall of 1965, and it actually finished its very first season at number 9 in the ratings. So it was a big hit right out of the gate, and it turned Bob Crane into a big TV star overnight. He had to leave his radio show, which was very difficult. He tried to do both shows. When he was on the Donna Reed Show, he would do the radio show. After it wrapped at 10, he'd go over and do Donna Reed. But he wasn't the star of the Donna Reed show either. I mean, there were even episodes where he didn't necessarily appear in. He wasn't, required to be there all the time. But when he got Hogan's Heroes, everything changed because he was the star of that show. Had to definitely fully commit to that show. And so trying to do the radio show and Hogan's Heroes was just absolutely impossible. So he reluctantly let the radio show go after 9 successful years, and so he could solely focus on Hogan's Heroes. Again, Bob Crane, big star, household name. The show was doing very, very well. He finally had made it. He was a TV actor and a TV star. Now, of course, Bob Crane, very attractive man, very funny, very friendly, charming, affable, and the women fell for him. He had a lot of women throwing themselves at him, and it got to the point, although he was a married man, he married his high school sweetheart, Anne, in 1950. They had 3 kids together. So he'd been married for quite a while, but when he began to get all of this attention from all of these ladies, he just was not able to resist it. As a matter of fact, he and Cynthia Lynn, who portrayed Helga in the first season of Hogan's Heroes, were involved in a very serious affair during the first season of the show, to the point where she left the show because she was married as well. She was trying to save her marriage, and of course that didn't happen anyway. She and her husband still divorced. She never got over leaving the show. I don't think she ever even got over Bob Crane. But Bob was a really likable guy. I mean, he was very friendly. He was very down to earth, was not full of himself. He loved to sign autographs. He was very kind to the public, kind to his fans. He was easy to work with on the show. Everyone on the show got along very well. I mean, they all had a great chemistry behind the scenes as well as on camera. Of all the TV shows I've watched in my life thus far, I love the cast of Hogan's Heroes. If I had to make a list of like the top 10 or top 5 TV casts that I liked, Hogan's Heroes, that cast would definitely be at the top of the list because I'm very, very fond of everyone who was on that show. They were so good together. They really played off each other very well. They had a great chemistry. The set was known as being very friendly, as an open set, meaning that, visitors could come on the set. And it was just a very relaxed environment. And before I go any further, if you really want to find out all about who Bob Crane really was as a person and as a man, there is a wonderful book I would highly recommend that you check out. Or that you buy. I don't know if libraries are back open yet. I'm assuming that they are. I know the library shut down when COVID hit. But this is a book that I would definitely recommend actually buying, like I did. I bought this book. It is called Bob Crane, The Definitive Biography. I cannot remember the names of the ladies who wrote the book, but they poured everything they had into that book. The book is about, I have the hardcover version. There's a softcover version as well. The hardcover version has more pictures in it because they got a lot of pictures from Bob's family. And they really, really made this a labor of love. They put everything into compiling this book. It's about 400 pages, 400 or 500 pages. It's one of the thickest books that I own. And it's a book that I really treasure. And it really opened my eyes as to who Bob Crane really was as a person. And of course, we're going to get more off into the dark side of Bob Crane in a little bit. But again, I highly recommend that book. I got my copy from Amazon. It's also available on eBay. And, of course, places like BW Books and Barnes & Noble, Apes Books. So that is a great way to really find out who Bob Crane was. I also highly recommend his son's book. His eldest son, Bobby, wrote a book as well about his father's life and their relationship. And, of course, unfortunately, what happened to him later on, which we'll of course get off into shortly. But if you really want to find out about Bob Crane, I would recommend both of those books. So anyway, let's say 1967. Hogan's Heroes is still doing very well in the ratings. It always did very well in the ratings. And Bob Crane, of course, married man, but it was around this time, 1966, 67, where he met John Carpenter. Now, he met him through Richard Dawson, his co-star on Hogan's Heroes. John Carpenter was a video salesman. Believe he worked for Sony. And he was selling video equipment to the biggest stars in Hollywood because, we're talking 1966, 1967. Videotape machines and recordings and all of that kind of equipment was, it was unheard of. It was something that only the very, very wealthy could afford. It was not something that the average person even knew about was in existence. So he was making a lot of good money selling all of this equipment to all of these big celebrities. Well, he met Bob on the set of Hogan's one day. He came to meet Richard Dawson, and Richard introduced the two. And of course, they became friends right away. And he began to, hook Bob up, because Bob already was an avid photographer. He took home movies all the time, always had a video camera in his hands. And so he already had a feel for this kind of a hobby. So Carpenter just expanded on it even more for him. So he was hooking Bob up with the newest equipment, and Bob was just really like a little kid in a toy store. He was just acquiring all the newest equipment, having a great time with it. But unfortunately, that's when things began to take a dark turn. Bob became addicted to pornography. Bob became a sex addict. And we all know about his sexual addiction, no doubt. He got to the point where he was having numerous affairs, and Carpenter, Carpenter was, not married. No, Carpenter, I believe, was married, as a matter of fact. And so they would go out together. They would go to clubs. They'd go to bars. The women would flock to Bob because, of course, he was a movie star. He was a celebrity and was very attractive, and he knew how to talk to anyone. He had a great personality, and the ladies just flocked to him. So he had no trouble picking up women, and Carpenter got to go along with a ride, and he got to take advantage of the situation, and he was enjoying this lifestyle. So he and Bob, going down through into late in the 70s, they were doing this. They would go out, they'd pick up women, take these women back to a hotel, and Bob would videotape their sexual activities. He would take pictures of, the women, nude pictures. He had photo albums of nude women that he had met across the country. And he just got deeper and deeper into this kind of lifestyle. I read, I don't remember where it was, some article online that one day he showed Richard Dawson his trunk, or no, I think it was the back seat of his car, one of the two. Pictures, just literally the trunk, the back seat, whichever it was, inundated with photos of nude women. So he really had gone down a very dark path. He had a very serious problem, and he had this problem for many, many years. And that's what helped to destroy his marriage to his first wife, Anne. In addition to the fact that he had embarked upon an affair with Patty Olson. Because when Cynthia Lynn left Hogan's Heroes, Patty Olson replaced her as Hilda. Bob and Patty immediately began an affair, and he basically left Anne, and Anne and Bob had 3 kids. He left Anne, left the family to go and be with Patty. They married in 1970 on the set of Hogan's Heroes. They had a child in 1971, Scotty. And so, but even though the fact that Bob was married to a new woman, he was still a sex addict. That was something that was still ongoing in his life. Now, of course, Hogan's Heroes came to a sudden end in the spring of 1971. This was a part of the rural purge where Freddie Silverman became programming director of CBS and decided he wanted to change the network's image. So he decided to cancel a lot of long-running TV shows that had been so successful for years, including Family Affair, The Beverly Hillbillies, Green Acres, The Jim Neighbors Show, Mayberry RFD, and Hogan's Heroes. So Hogan's Heroes ended its run all of a sudden. No finale, no warning, no closure, no nothing. Would have been nice to have seen how it would have been. Had the show had a finale. But, Silverman didn't give the opportunity for any of these shows to even have a series finale. He just canceled them all of a sudden, and they were just done. Bob, again, despite the fact, and that's one of the things I want to touch up on in this episode, is that Bob Crane was a good-hearted person. I mean, yes, he was a sex addict, but I really hate to see people solely focus on the fact that he had that problem. They can't really see anything else other than the fact that he was a sex addict who was later on killed. That's all they can see him as. I mean, some of the comments that I see online are just they're so brutal, and they're so mean and so mean spirited and so nasty. It's just really sad. But that's one reason why I recommend both of these books that I mentioned, because you get to find out who Bob Crane really was. When the show ended, Bob wrote all of the principal cast members. He wrote each of them a personalized letter. These letters are printed in the definitive biography book. He wrote each of them, thanking them for, working with them. He enjoyed working with them, and he hoped that they'd work together again. It was very telling that this man would actually sit down and write these letters the way that he did to his, cast members, co-stars. That, again, like I said, says a lot about the kind of person that he was. It says a lot about his character. Bob was not easy, very easygoing on the set. I mean, I will say that he kind of stood out in a way apart from the others, because everyone else within the cast, principal cast, they were all, Democrats, all liberal. Bob was a conservative Republican. So they didn't see eye to eye on politics, but they were very mature in that they didn't let their political differences cause any type of animosity or bad feelings on the set when they were working and when they were taping. They got along very well. The cast members did. So anyway, Hogan's Heroes ended, and Bob continued to do episodic television. He appeared in Night Gallery, The Doris Day Show. He appeared also in Love American Style. Then he tried his hand at films. He went back into the movie world again in Superdad. He had a contract going with Disney. He was going to do some films for them. Superdad, not a good movie. I've seen it, of course. It's just not funny. I mean, it's so corny and so tacky. Superdad is about an overprotective father who is just having difficulty with the fact that his daughter is basically growing up. He feels that she's growing away from him. She's, in her teens, like 17 years old or something like that, 18. And he feels that he's losing, his only child, and he's trying to, impress her and be the cool, hip dad to, her and her friends, and he's making himself he's embarrassing himself constantly in doing so. Her boyfriend in the film was portrayed by Kurt Russell, but he doesn't care for the boyfriend in the film. He thinks his daughter can do better. He tries to hook her up with a stuffy guy played by Nicholas Hammond, who was in the classic film The Sound of Music, and he was also on the TV series Spider-Man in the late 70s over on CBS. But the movie, again, is not good, and it bombed at the box office, and it's no surprise as to why. It's available on DVD. It might be on YouTube, but it's really not a good movie. However, Disney began to pull away from Bob even before Superdad was released, because word leaked back to them, and Disney's always been very straight, very strict about who works for them. Word began to get back to them that Bob was participating in shady dealings, activities behind the scenes within his personal life. And they did not want anyone like that starring in their movies. Bob was in one more Disney film, 1976's Gus, but he had a very small role in that film. He portrayed Pepper, a sportscaster. Pepper was funny. He was arrogant. He was conceited. He was full of himself, but he was one of the highlights of the film, in my opinion. Bob was really good in the movie. I hate that he was in it more, but he really brought he was a bright spot in that film. The film was about this mule who turns this football team into a winning team. They were a losing team, and the mule turns everything around. The mule, of course, is named Gus, and Gus turns the team around. The movie, I think it was pretty funny. Kind of silly, of course, kind of corny, but at the same time, it was better than Superdad. It also starred Ed Asner and Don Knotts, Dick Butkus, Dick Van Patten, Harold Gould. Again, it's available on DVD. It might be on YouTube. I haven't seen it in several years, but, I thought it was, pretty funny. Anyway, by 1975, however, between these two Disney films, Bob wanted to go back into a regular TV series, and he got that opportunity with a brand new show called Second Start. The show was about a middle-aged man in his 40s who decides to basically give up his job, give up his home, move his wife and daughter and himself to a very unique apartment. And he decides that he wants to go back to college and he wants to become a doctor, and he goes to medical school. So the name of the show was changed to The Bob Crane Show, and it made its debut in 1975. However, it was on Thursday nights up against The Waltons, which was a top 10 show. In 1975, The Waltons was must-see TV. Excuse me. Everyone was saying good night, John Boy, and so that was definitely a problem right there. It within itself, the time slot that it was in. And then, of course, according to Bob, he felt that he didn't have the supporting cast. The show didn't have the supporting cast that it needed. It was produced by Mary Tyler Moore Show's production company, but he felt that the Bob Crane Show needed the supporting characters that you saw in the Mary Tyler Moore Show and in the Bob Newhart Show. And I agree with him on that, because that was one of the things that made those shows so successful. They had great supporting characters, and the Bob Crane Show didn't have that. So he felt that too was one reason why the show failed. Now, I've seen a few episodes of the Bob Crane Show. It actually was pretty funny, in my opinion. There's an episode or two on YouTube, and you can check it out for yourself. But I didn't think it was that bad. I think that had they placed it in a different time slot, not having it against a powerhouse like the Waltons, had they brought in some fresh characters, I think the show would have done well and stayed on for a few years. But unfortunately, the show ended after 14 weeks, and Bob was, of course, very, crushed by that, very disappointed, very angry that he was pretty much typecast as Colonel Hogan. I mean, he really had difficulty getting work because everyone went to see him. Oh, Colonel Hogan, and this was his opportunity, he felt, with the Bob Crane Show to break out of that and have a brand new show, have a show on in the modern day, nothing about the military or about war. And unfortunately, it just didn't happen for him. So Bob ended up entering the dinner theater circuit the same year Hogan's Heroes ended. He was doing a play called Beginner's Luck. And so he was doing that across the country. He was going around the country. That's how he was really basically making a living for himself and supporting himself, supporting his family, was through Beginner's Luck, because the TV work and the film work was so sporadic. He couldn't really depend upon that to be able to, like I said, make a living. So after the Bob Crane Show ended and after Gus, he continued to do more episodic television. He did Quincy. He did Nancy Drew, the Nancy Drew Mysteries, an episode of Love Boat, Ellery Queen. But most of his attention was focused on Beginner's Luck. Bob, of course, throughout all of this, still, taping all of his sexual liaisons. He was very open about what he was doing. He was, he was sharing all of this information, what he was doing with these women with his son, Bobby. Word even has it that his youngest son, Scotty, remembers seeing, pornographic pictures and movies that, his dad had made. Carol O'Connor and Bob Crane were very good friends. And he would have Carol over to the house, and he would show Carol his photographs, and he would show Carol his videos. He would be off on the road doing Beginner's Luck. He'd show the maintenance men, his collection. He was very open, very proud of what he was doing. He didn't say anything wrong with what he was doing, but he did begin to finally catch on that he had a problem around 1977, 1978. For one thing, his marriage to Patty had gone south. She filed for divorce in late 77. He moved in with his eldest son, Bobby. They were roommates, and they were sharing an apartment together. And, Bob began to really kind of get tired of the whole thing. He was getting ready to turn 50 years old. He basically saw what this was doing to his career, to his family, to himself. And he got tired of Carpenter. He began to see Carpenter as a hanger-on, basically someone who just wanted to be with Bob Crane for the perks and benefits of the relationship. So he began to kind of distance himself from Carpenter, and then he decided he wanted to just kind of end the relationship. He confided all of this to his eldest son, Bobby. They were very, very close. Not only father and son, but also the best of friends. So he told Bobby all about this, and Bobby supported his decision to dump Carpenter and to clean up his life, clean up his act, get his career back going, get rid of Patty, because Bobby never cared for Patty. And Bob's 2 daughters didn't care for Patty either, and Patty didn't care for his 2 daughters. So Bob was at a crossroads right before his 50th birthday. And in the midst of it all, he goes to Arizona to do beginner's luck. He ends up in Scottsdale in late June. And it was in the early morning hours of June the 29th, 1978, when Bob was brutally murdered. Now, that crime is still unsolved after all of these years. And evidently, because I've read some books about the murder of Bob Crane. I haven't read everything, but I've seen lots of documentaries. I have read, a couple of books. One of the things I remember reading is that Bob was a light sleeper. So I also read that Bob always deadbolted, always locked his front door when he went to sleep at night. He was always afraid of being robbed. So, because I think he was robbed in Chicago, as a matter of fact. I believe he and one of his daughters, and I think Bobby as well, their hotel room was robbed. So he was very conscious about making sure that his door was locked. Whomever took Bob Crane's life was someone that he trusted. Someone was in that room with him, in that apartment with him, because he was renting an apartment while he was performing beginner's luck in Scottsdale. Someone was in the room who knew him, someone he was comfortable enough to go to sleep around. And, some people think that John Carpenter did it because he was mad about the end of their relationship. Some people don't think that Carpenter did it at all. Some people think that it was, maybe one of his many female, sexual partners. But whoever did it killed him in the most brutal of ways. They took a tripod because, Bob had lots of tripods around. He was heavily into photography, always had been. They took a tripod and they hit him twice on the side of the head. The second blow was the blow that was fatal. He died instantly. He was 49 years old, 2 weeks shy of his 50th birthday. And the Scottsdale Police Department had never had anything like this happen before. A major celebrity murdered in their town. They really bungled the murder investigation. They did not seal off the crime scene. They had people in and out all the time. It was really a bad mishandling of everything. And that didn't help in how to, solve this murder. And then whoever committed the crime also took an electrical cord, wrapped it around Bob's neck, basically to make sure he was dead, to choke him. And then they tied it into a bow on the, around the, ending at the base of the back of his neck. It was a very, very brutal murder. And unfortunately, if you go to Google and you type in Bob Crane, you're going to see pictures of his dead body, covered in blood in his bed. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. Bob Crane, yes, he had a serious problem. He was trying to overcome it, but didn't have the chance to do so. But the way that he was murdered, it's still so disturbing. Very, very disturbing, the way that this man died. So, of course, with the death of Bob Crane, that, of course, made major news. And unfortunately, all of Bob's secrets came out. All of the videotapes, the pictures, the pornography, everything he was doing in secret all came to light. Now, these days, a sex tape is no big deal. You make a sex tape and, you'll be a big star. But in 1978, it was scandalous. It was something that was seen as dirty, and it was seen as vile and just abnormal. And that was what really ruined the image and reputation of Bob Crane. There are people to this day who still sneer at Bob Crane, laugh at him, make fun of him, look down on him, turn up their nose at him. Oh, he was, just a washed up TV star who was a sex addict, who got his, head bashed in. Those are the kind of things I read about Bob Crane all the time. And that's why I am so glad that these ladies wrote this book about Bob to basically clear a lot of that up. But people are still going to have their negative points of view and opinions where he's concerned in his lifestyle. But a book like this is going to definitely make a difference, and it's going to change some people's opinions about him. Now, as for me, I've always liked Bob Crane, so I didn't have a negative opinion of him before they even released this book or even began to even, compile it. But it did solidify the fact that, he definitely was a kind person. He was a good-hearted person. He was not a monster. He was not a bad guy. He just had a serious problem, like a lot of people do. A lot of people have addictions, and addictions are hard to overcome, but they definitely can be. People do it all the time. And I do wonder what Bob's life would have been like had he overcome that addiction. Would he have married again? Would he have had another successful TV show? Would he have maybe gone into directing or gone into films? What else would he have done with his life had he lived longer? Had he not lost his life? Had someone not decided to just take his life away from him? That's something that definitely a lot of people think about. And I just wanted to put this episode out there to just say that, again, a lot of people, they're not going to change their mind in regard to Bob Crane. That's something that's just a given. But again, I just wanted to basically encourage you out there who are listening to go and check out Bobby's book. Now, Bobby's book, of course, it goes deep into Bob's, sexual addiction, goes into his murder. The definitive biography book mentions, the fact, of course, he was killed, but it focuses more on the good things about Bob that people don't know about. Because, these ladies interviewed people that went to school with him, grew up with him, worked with him, other people in radio, guest stars on Hogan's Heroes, Robert Clary, who of course portrayed LeBeau in Hogan's Heroes. He and Kenneth Washington are the last two. Kenneth Washington portrayed Baker. They're the last two members of the cast of Hogan's Heroes who are still with us today. So these ladies went out there and they really talked to everyone, as many people as they could who knew Bob. And they really, like I said, put together a wonderful book. And I'm so glad that they did that because, again, it lets you really look deeply into the life of Bob Crane, not just looking at the seedy parts and the dark side of him, but looking at the good side of him. Bobby's book does dive into the dark side, of course. It also takes a deep dive to the kind of father that he was and what close friends that they were. So I would recommend both of these books. And that way you can really get to find out who Bob Crane was. Bob Crane also was a phenomenal drummer. He was a professional drummer. He drummed on Hogan's Heroes. He would always drum in between breaks on the set. That's something he'd go into his dressing room and do and just play the drums. He did drum in 2 episodes of Hogan's Heroes. So a season 1 episode. I cannot remember the episode. And then, of course, I believe next to the last episode of Hogan's Heroes, he played the drums. It was the episode when they were trying to trigger an avalanche. And they had this jam session. LeBeau, Carter, Baker, and Hogan. And, of course, Newkirk was, conducting them, and Bob Crane, really did his stuff on the drums. And that's my favorite episode of the show. Speaking of Hogan's Heroes, the entire series is available on DVD, and you can see it every weeknight over on MeTV. Now, MeTV has been showing Hogan's Heroes for years, to the point where there are a lot of people out there who are saying that they should really give that show a rest because it's just been on for so long, 2 episodes every night. 10 and 10:30 Eastern Time, 9 and 9:30 Central Time. But I mean, it's also a TV show that a lot of people still enjoy watching. So I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon because it's kind of split down the middle. Half of the people think that it should be given a break, and the other half want it to stay on the air. So again, Bob Crane, fortunately, his legacy is not all dark. And that's, a good thing. Hogan's Heroes is still out there, still a very successful show, still popular, still very beloved. And then, of course, like I said, you have these books out there that are also showing Bob in a positive light. And so it's nice to see that, there are some good things about Bob Crane that are still out there available for people to be able to discover and read and watch and enjoy. So I wanted to, like I said, do an episode to pay homage to him because I'm very fond of him. He's one of my favorite TV actors and, really good looking guy at that. Very funny, great personality. Love everything I've ever seen Bob Crane in, I always enjoyed. And, just wanted to say some things about him and give him a little bit of love because I think that he definitely deserves that. And on that note, that's going to wrap up this episode of Two Sisters, One TV, the classic TV podcast. We'll be back with a brand new episode in about a week. And until that time, thank you so much for listening as always, and we will see you next time.